Welcome to Fraud Friday. Delaney, Sexton, Lance, Sexton, good to see you both.
Good to be here.
Unfortunately, we have a lot of news, but we wanted to do something a little bit different. We wanted to do a Where Are They Now session, and Delaney's going to do that. But first, we're going to pay some bills. Lance, SBA Express loan training got Chick-fil-A.
Can we get Chick-fil-A to sponsor us, Bob?
Sure. Well, we're on that. But absence of that, let's talk about what we do, and what you do best is training. And SB Express, how has this changed over the? This is not your father's SB Express loan program, and you're going to talk about the changes and why do they need to attend next Wednesday?
Well, I mean, all of SBA lending in terms of underwriting and closing has changed with the new 5010 7.1. And the SBA Express program is an amazing program that participant lenders can use to support their SBA lending effort. One of the things I used to love to do, Bob, every 7A loan I used to do in a smaller institution, I would put an express revolver as part of the deal. I'd do the 7A loan and a nice little express revolver. But the express program is a great way to serve your customers. There's some abbreviated underwriting and closing requirements now, and we just want to make sure you're updated and understand how to properly get an SBA Express loan done and closed. So,
Lance, I would have lost that bet if you told me 43% of S7A loans were Express. I would not have believed you.
Well, there's some of the bigs, Bob. When I say big, I mean big institutions love the Express program because
rightly so.
It's a very quick way, and of course, the administrator Guzman is really pushing smaller SBA loans, wanting participant lenders to do more smaller SBA loans, and the Express program is an incredible way to do it. I'll give a really quick abbreviated example, Bob. I had a great customer that did not want to go through the hassle of the big 7A loan. He was buying a $350,000 warehouse, and I was able to do an express loan for him on that warehouse, 25-year term, less underwriting requirements, less documentation requirements, and was able to get that loan approved and closed much quicker than I could have a 7A loan. So a great customer used the express program to get the task accomplished. So, I mean, Express is a great way to serve your customers. Guys, please get your team signed up for this webinar.
Delaney, where are they now?
That's a great question. They are scattered around the country. But first, we'll start off with an update with Chris Roglieri. He is not in custody, so let me just open with that. He should be wherever he's at in New York. But we did see a recent update from the Times-Union. This is related to his bankruptcy. The trustee of his bankruptcy wants them to either dismiss the case or switch it to a Chapter 7. Roglieri had testified that he has no job, no income, and no prospects. And so the trustee and I quote, "The debtor's monthly operating reports confirm those facts. With no income, the debtor cannot rehabilitate his financial situation through Chapter 11. This case can only proceed as a liquidation."
Lance, I'm going to give you a hypothetical. Hypothetically, Chris withdrew $1.5 million out of his account, alleges the trustee before the bankruptcy was filed. Don't talk about Chris, but hypothetically, if that occurred with someone else, how much trouble would they be in?
Well, they could make effort to recover that in the Chapter 7 bankruptcy. There's a look back period.
He took it in cash.
Some borrowers try to make strategic moves before they file, or I'm not sorry, Bob, not strategic. Well, it is strategic.
It is, yeah.
They try to move assets around and then they file for bankruptcy. The bankruptcy court has the opportunity to do a look back, and they're most likely going to look back at this withdrawal and try to figure out what he used the money for and capture those assets in liquidation.
And Lance, would you agree that the bankruptcy courts are pretty good about going into the details of this stuff? They know the game.
There's absolutely no doubt about it. Sometimes when you work liquidation cases, you'll have borrowers talk about, well, I may have to file bankruptcy at some point. And then they start talking about things that they would do to help us recover on the SBA loan. And, I've had to seek legal counsel, Bob, in cases like that to make sure that, for instance, we get a pay down from a customer
right.
A certain period of time right before a bankruptcy from liquidation of an asset. I don't want to get that pay down on the SBA loan that we're liquidating.
And then have it clawed back.
And then have the bankruptcy court come back and say, hey, give that money back to us. So it is certainly a place where I appreciate the sage advice of legal counsel, making sure we walk through those steps appropriately.
One person who lived this was Carrie Agee. She was alleged to move assets around. And where is Carrie these days? Delaney, you're on mute.
Sorry, everybody. I was saying we're taking a little bit of a walk down memory lane, especially for me, because I followed this case when I first started with you.
That's right. And you went to Indianapolis. You went to the trial.
I did. And now to see where she is today, she is in Danbury, the Federal Correctional Institution in Danbury. She will be released in about a year and a half now, December 7th. And then the other individuals in the case, there was Kelly Isley. Sorry, her name was slipping me for a moment. She's got about a year left. And then the rest of the individuals have since been released. They were all released in 2023.
And for those who don't know what we're talking about, what did the 5 do?
Well, you might have to collaborate with me a little bit here. So they were found, well, first I should say they were a lender service provider, and they were helping different banks and institutions, of course, with loan packaging, and they were working on these loans knowing that these applicants were ineligible, and they were making some edits that you probably should not do, some misrepresentations, some concealed information, whiteout on loan documents, and they were resubmitting loan applications that were denied through expedited approval channels.
Lance, the thing that always bothered me on this case was I have no issue with Carrie. She got a 5-6 year sentence. She should have. The other, they indicted and jailed the entire staff, the entire management staff.
Oh, yeah.
That is so rare, but I'm going to let you comment on that. I always thought that was unfair. Go ahead.
I think quite often some of the support staff is asked to just follow the request of the CEO of the company. It was kind of unusual to see them pay the price for this, but I think the thing that really stands out in both of these cases that I want to make a comment on, I know both. Well, I don't know Chris well, but I've had the opportunity to meet with him briefly. He was, I want to say, in my view, was a great professional in the industry. Bob, I presented with Carrie at the Flagel conference.
I was at her shop. She was an advertiser of ours. I gave a training session in the BankServe headquarters.
But Bob, the point I want to make is these are great SBA professionals at one point in their life that decided to make a bad decision related to SBA lending. And the point is, guys, we are all faced with important decisions as SBA good citizens, Bob. I love to use that term. And we need to make the right decisions, the ethical decisions, the legal decisions in these cases. Like I said, Carrie, I knew her well. I have presented with her. and
Yeah.
really had a very high opinion of her as a SBA professional. And at some
As an
point,
SBA professional, as a woman entrepreneur, she
at some
yeah.
point, she decided, hey, I'm going to cross that line, and it just continued to be that way. So I encourage everybody in the SBA industry, be that good SBA citizen. Don't make that wrong choice. Don't decide to
And
skirt around the rules.
that's why we cover this, because I think from time to time you have to take a step back. And in this particular case, the staff was made decisions that were against the law. They lied to SBA. They put white out on documents.
Yeah.
They got caught up in the Lance, and they didn't get any extra money for doing that. They simply did it to keep their job and to make the boss happy.
Well, and quite often in cases like this, Bob, yeah, it's kind of like we've talked about sometimes, Bob, in our cash flow webinars, and we talk about the clerk who works for the small business who at one point has a past due credit card bill. And they say, well, I'm just going to take $500 from the company till and pay my credit card bill. And then the next time a problem comes up, they got away with it the first time, and then they take $1,000. And that's the same thing here. There's a point where you're given a decision. Am I going to do the right thing or am I going to do the wrong thing? And once you cross that line, it's hard to come back.
Nick Patel got a 30-year sentence for USDA fraud, $179 million fraud. His wife was recently, help me out on this, I want to be careful on my words, indicted on another $20 million fraud. Delaney, tell us what happened and I'll stop.
Yes, she was, I think actually just about a month ago, last month, she was arrested, and I know she is not currently being held. And there's not a lot of information that has came out since then, as far as I know, but just as a little bit of a background, as you said, he committed a $179 million loan fraud scheme. While he was on pretrial release, he carried out a very similar loan fraud scheme for another 20 million, which he actually has not been sentenced for that yet. And then with his wife, he's not been named, but they did search his cell and find possibly fraudulent loan documents
No, they
under
found
his
fraudulent
mattress.
loan documents.
They did.
It
I'm
wasn't
just trying to
possible.
be
They found
careful here.
files of another
Allegedly.
loan fraud. Yeah.
Allegedly, I'm being careful.
No, I know, but we can hide behind the truth, and there were loan files in there that were fraudulent.
There were. So again, he hasn't been named in that $7 million loan fraud case. I'll make sure and keep watch of that. But as of right now, he is set to be released on July 8th, 2039. But the interesting thing is he is not located, as far as I could find, in the Bureau of Prisons custody. So I'm not sure if he's being transferred, if it might be related to the sentencing that is bound to come soon or eventually. I don't know.
Maybe he's under diesel therapy. I'll let you guys Google that too. That's nasty thing the feds do. Go ahead.
I had never heard of that until I was reading one of our past articles from before I started. That was a first for me.
Yeah, diesel therapy is not, anyway, that it is not a nice, it is not nice. And go ahead. This is this
Bob, I have to make this comment first. First of all, I knew Hector Berto.
Oh, we all did. Yeah.
And he's a great SBA professional, did a ton of good things for small business. But the other side note, Bob, does he not look like Nick Saban, the University of Alabama coach?
I'm not going to, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're on your own for that one. I can't.
Yeah, you're on an island.
Hey, everybody that's on the call with us today, just tell me, do you think he looks like Nick Saban? No.
See, we do not do pop culture. We don't do sports references in our editorial content.
Okay, sorry,
Lance.
sorry, again, Bob.
Lance refuses to read scripts and read editorial memos. So, because now you got people. Anyway, go ahead. Now you got me. Now you got me thinking about that. Okay, fine.
Yeah, you've got to Google Nick Saban and put the picture.
No, we can do that, but now we're getting it. Go ahead, Delaney. Back on track. Rein your dad in. Be the adult here, Delaney.
All right, Mr. Hector Berto was recently sentenced and is serving his 20-month prison sentence at the Federal Correctional Institution, Hairlong. Now, I don't know where that is. Bob, do you?
That is it is above Lake Tahoe. It is on the California-Nevada border, up in the middle of nowhere. The best reference I can give you, it's about probably 90 miles from Burning Man. That probably is the best thing I can. He's out there in the boonies.
Okay, well then that's where he's at. He's set to be released on October 1st, 2025. Now this is my own 2 cents, so please take it with a grain of salt, but a lot of times they do get released earlier. So I imagine that could be a possibility in this case.
Oh.
Yeah, but it's not that the feds, you can get maybe 10%, but it's
a very
not,
small amount, but
yeah, very small amount, but you're right.
Good behavior.
Yeah.
Oh, do you want me?
Oh.
Sorry, everybody. See, it's all gone a little
We've
bit downhill
muzzled
since we started
Lance.
talking about coaches.
No more Nick Saban talk. No.
That's right.
Just for a little bit of a summary, he was soliciting charity donations to be used to establish underprivileged youth programs, and they were being used for other expenses. I think a little portion of it was
other
used,
people involved, and he relied on other people, and unfortunately, he was the big fish, and prosecutors like to go after big fishes. I'm not saying that exonerates him, but he definitely had a target on his back by being involved with this. Finally, I want to talk about this case, Lance. This is Erickson State Bank. It is in Erickson, Nebraska, village of 90 people, $100 million bank. In 2015, it was taken over by the state. Delaney, go ahead and fill us in. What happened?
I am going to interrupt very briefly. I am sorry. We have received a response that he does look like Nick Saban, just to give you an answer.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the comment.
The support.
Okay. Now, back to Erickson State Bank. He recently pled guilty to a couple different charges, and this was starting back in 2012. The bank began lending with an individual related to Jack, and he was, of course, since he had a relation to this person, he was not supposed to be involved in any of these lending interactions or transactions. But by 2015, he started interfering. Some of those actions included advancing bank funds on the loans beyond the approved loan amounts, manipulating data connected to these loans, payment due dates, loan maturity dates, etc., to conceal the past due status of these loans from the board of directors. He was advancing loans beyond the approved note amounts, etc., and he was eventually removed from his position in 2019.
Part of the failing to disclose the status of the loans is he did notes matured, and he rolled them over as new loans, taking them off delinquent status and making them current. Lance, that was the crime in this case.
Yeah, and also lending to a relative. Bob Delaney, as you know, I've worked in several banks. That was one of the big, I'd have loved to have been my brother's loan officer. I'd have loved to have been my dad's loan officer, but it was prohibited at every bank that I worked at.
Yeah,
any relatives.
You can't do it. Yeah, you can't do it.
And in particular, you've got the leader of the bank that is getting involved in loans to a relative. So that's a big no. And doing rollovers, a lot of banks in the banking crisis back in 2008, 2009, that's why they got in trouble. They had loans that were, close to default, and instead of letting them go into default, they just do a renewal and capitalize the interest and move on down the road, and they had a current loan again. So they were
well, that's the thing.
Potential.
They took it off the delinquency list instead to make it look current, so they wouldn't have to reserve a lot. This is a small bank, $100 million bank. $1.6 million loan goes bad. That's a pretty big hit to your assets, and obviously that resulted in in the failure. So, Lance, my last comment on this. Jack is 71, is 61 when this happened. Excuse me. So he's been going through this for 10 years. Financially, his life is ruined. He lost 10 years of good earning power. And you have to ask the question, how much did he really benefit from this? There's no allegations of that. He simply was trying to make an accommodation to someone who I'm sure he believed the loan was solid at the time, but when it blew up, he ends up being guilty to fraud. It's a pretty tough way to go down.
It absolutely is, Bob. And like I said, this is a small community bank. So the president of the bank is the leader who sets the ethical standards for everyone else in the bank. And so in terms of prosecutors looking at him, it's like many of the cases that we see when you're in a position of responsibility and should be doing the right thing and setting an example for the rest of your team. When you don't, you'll get prosecuted.
Thank you very much, Delaney. Good reporting. Thanks, Lance. Thank you all for joining us today for Fraud Friday.
Have a
Have a
nice
great
weekend.